I went ahead and built a cabinet for under my table saw. There was a hole in the old table saw, which I'll explain. But in the process of filling the hole in, I decided it was a good time to build a cabinet to store some of my table saw stuff. It's got some cool features like this, and I'll go into those in the course of the video. Stick around and let's build something. All right, this is the hole in the wing of the table saw where my router lift has been. I recently took it out and now I need to patch that hole. The best way to do this is to build a new top for the wing. So I'll start by unbolting the top from the rest of the saw, and then with a little bit of persuasion, I can remove it. The top seems to be held on with just some screws to this frame. I'm going to give it a shot taking it apart and reusing the frame part and just replacing the top. We'll see how it goes. If it doesn't work, then I'll just have to rebuild the whole thing. There's a laminate on the top that actually wraps around the sides and around the corners, but I can just break that away. And then I can use the original top to set the table saw and cut a new top out of this sheet of plywood. Then I can screw the original frame back to that new top, and just using a little spacer here, get these cross members placed nice and straight across. And with that, it's ready to go. This is cherry plywood, and you can see it's got a little bit of a suntan here because this part used to be covered up by my miter saw shroud. And there's a couple little holes and some angles that I was calculating, apparently. Before I start building any more, I'm just going to test fit and make sure this thing fits right back where it came from, and with a little bumpity bump it does. And then I'll take some measurements so I can start building the case for the cabinet that's going to hang down beneath. So I want the fronts of the drawers to be on the same plane as the front of the rail of the table saw, which means the cabinet has to be under it, and it also needs to kind of project forward a little from where the top is that I just built. So these notches allow the rail to pass through there and kind of push the whole thing forward a few inches so that the drawers aren't buried way underneath the saw. This is a terrible idea for a cut. That little piece there is totally trapped between the blade and the fence, and that is how things go real south real fast. Don't do it like this. The better solution is to cut it with the offcut piece on the far side of the blade from the saw so that when it comes loose, it doesn't get trapped. Also, if you love safety stuff, I mean, who doesn't? Take a minute to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Then I can just finish off those cuts with this pull saw. There's a bracket that mounts on the underside of the table that connects this part that I'm building to the cast iron part. And I need to make sure that when I build the side of the cabinet, there's a space cut out for that. I used the same technique of raising the blade all the way up on the table saw. I didn't think far enough ahead to put the offcut piece on the outside when I made the second cut, but I did give it a little more slack and stop the cut a little earlier. Again, super dangerous cut. So I'll just take that one off with the pull saw again. And then I can mount that bracket right onto where it's gonna go. So you can see here how the side that I just cut fits up under the top that I cut a little earlier. And then I'm gonna be gluing some gussets on to attach those two that are flush to the inside of that frame and to the side that I just cut. the bottom of the cabinet is going to be held to the sides just with pocket screws. So I'll go down the line on either of the two sides of the bottom and put about 6 or 8 holes on each side to keep things together. Then I'll glue along the bottom edge of the side of the cabinet and attach the bottom to that one side with those pocket screws. And then flipping the whole thing over, I can put the same gussets onto the top of the right side of the cabinet. And then gluing the bottom edge, I can once again screw those pocket holes in from the bottom to the right side. Sick. So now I'm going to add another top to the cabinet, which will be right up against the drawers. There's a space between the top of the drawer and the bottom of the wing of the table saw, because otherwise the drawers wouldn't be able to pull out under the front rail of the table saw. So this just gives top right over the top drawer so that it doesn't get all dusty and infested in there. And then finally, to finish up the box, I'll put a piece of 1/4-inch plywood onto the back and then just brad nail it in place. All right, with that done, I gave the top and the sides a quick sanding. Didn't spend too much time on this because it's going to get scratched up pretty bad, as it is the top of my table saw. And a little finish just to protect it, but nothing fancy. I think this was Danish oil that I had laying around from an old project. Okay, so that makes the case all done, and now I'm just going to move on to the drawers. I used a new technique for drawer construction here. It's similar to stuff I've done in the past, but I was really happy with it because, especially for shop drawers, it was super fast and easy. I cut all the sides to the same height for each drawer and to their appropriate lengths and widths, and then I threw a single groove all the way around on both sides, the front and the back. I was able to do that with just 2 passes of the regular table saw blade, so I didn't have to worry about putting in a dado stack or anything like that. And then cutting the bottoms of the drawers was easy because they're all the same size. And then the fronts and the backs of the drawers get pocket holes on both ends. These go on the outside of the drawers. The reason that this is okay is because there's going to be false fronts on the front of the drawers, so you won't see it there. And the back of the drawer you don't see because it's in the back. Then assembling these drawers is also super easy. I'm putting a bead of glue into the groove that holds the bottom, a little bit of glue on the end of the front or back piece, and then the front or back piece goes there, and into that front or back piece you put a couple of pocket hole screws that'll attach it to the side. Then you can add a little glue to the remaining grooves on the remaining side and go through and just screw those in as well. So I've got my drawers in the case with 1/2-inch spacers between them. You can take the spacers out now that they're set where they need to be. And then on each drawer, you can just mark the halfway point. This one is 2 inches and 3/4 there. Actually have to be exact as long as they're the same. And then just bring those lines back into the case. And then you can see the line through the hole in the drawer slide when you lay it down on there, and then you just drive a screw. As long as the screw is on that line, the drawer slide is centered on the line. And you do the same thing on the drawers. You extend the line back along the drawer, and when you go to attach the slides, you just put the screws through the holes directly into that line. Everything should be lined up and you're good. Okay, so then the drawer boxes are all done, and I can cut some drawer fronts out of this 1/2 inch maple plywood, which is pretty nice. I'm then going to put a chamfer around the edge, which is only about 1/8 of an inch. I really like a chamfer on my drawer fronts and just about everything. I don't like roundovers, but if you like roundovers, tell me why in the comments, and maybe I'll be convinced. I'll give these all a quick sand with my beautifully taped hose onto the back of my sander. Remind me to 3D print something to make these fit together. I don't know. I just don't know. I can't with this. I can't. I just can't. All right, and then to finish these off, I'm just going to use boiled linseed oil. I like it on maple. It has a nice kind of glow. Doesn't really yellow too much, and it's easy to apply. Dries quickly. No fuss, no muss. So the front of the bottom drawer is going to line up with the bottom of the cabinet. I'll clamp it in place and throw a couple of screws into the inside here to hold it until I get a drawer pull on. To space it out, I'm using these old PCB boards. I love these things for spacers because they're exactly 6 millimeters, 0.16 inch, 16th of an inch. I think they're a 16th of an inch, but they're super exact, whatever they are. And for this one, I can, again, just clamp it on and screw from the inside. But when it comes to the topmost drawer, I have to pull them out and do this process a few inches out so that I have something to clamp to on the top. Not a big deal. It was pretty easy. And once that's clamped in place, I can still go ahead and throw a couple of screws from the inside to hold it there until the drawer pulls are on. All right, now to put some drawer pulls on, I just made this quick little template with a couple of holes in it and some really ugly brad nails all over the place. And then I can put some screws in from the other side and screw the drawer handles into place. So now I can move the cabinet back into place and into the wing of the table saw where it will be living for its long life. I got to wiggle under there and get some bolts back into place. This is the back leg for the back rail here, which is just held in place with some bolts. So I've got my leveling foot here with a T-nut and a 1/4 20 bolt in there. And what I've done is I've cut a slot in the other end of the bolt. And the reason I do that is I'm going to put a hole right here, and then I can adjust from the top with a screwdriver. And then I can use this drill bit to keep it aligned. And adjust the foot from up top. So this is a little holder that I want to have on the left side of the cabinet to keep my crosscut sled. It lives under the table saw before this build, and it's such a good thing to have at a really easy grab. So I can throw that there, and then whenever I need it, there it is. Really excited about that. I've already used it a couple of times, and it's just great. And finally, my favorite part of any organization project is putting the stuff into the system after it's all built. On this top drawer here, I've got my dado stack, the brake and the insert plate for the dado stack. I've got a couple of feather boards. I've got a large push block that I can keep in there. I have a smaller one on the fence, and that's the bigger one for bigger material, I guess. Down here, I got some spare parts for the table saw, the blade guard, a little mounter, some hardware, a backup brake. It's great to have a backup brake. I know I've mentioned this before. That was the miter gauge. And then on the bottom, I made this drawer tall enough to hold 10-inch blades, so any extra blades for the saw I can put down there. And there's plenty of room to put more stuff, which I'm sure I will be doing soon. Thanks for watching. Bye.